Okay, everyone. Good to see you. Long time, I think.
Yeah.
Seems like we had a gap of a few weeks. So we're talking about Yesod today, and so I'll start by saying, if you remember, I don't know, like I think I said it before. So the Sfirot are being, or the Kabbalistic outlook on the world is designed in both as a giving and a receiving situation, right? So, like in every situation, there's a giving situation and a receiving situation of energy, right? Whether it's object or it's an energy, it doesn't matter. But like we're living in a world in a very cold way, in a world of interactions or right? So everything is like in giving and taking. You're giving an energy by words you say, not only by things you give. You're receiving an energy by the way people talk to you, right? So, like, you might say something that is very harsh, but you say it in a soft way, so it's received differently. You might say something that is not as harsh, but you say it in a non soft way, so it will be received as a harsh thing, even though you didn't mean anything harsh, right? So, we're giving and receiving energies all the time, right? So, and and you could say that the first five sfirot, which are basically Chesed, Gevur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, are the sfirot of giving. The Yesod and especially and also the Malchut, but especially the Malchut. The Malchut is the last sfirah we'll be discussing probably in details next time. But the Malchut is the receiving, right? On every interactive relationship, right? So like if like it's let's say, okay, like let's say I'm talking to you and I'm telling you something, and I'm using now in my speech Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, right? And then through the energy and the words, the intonation, the body language, everything, you're Malchut, you're receiving, you're the Malchut of the reception, the receiving side of whatever energy I'm giving to you. Okay? The Yesod is the connective point between, I'm sorry, I miss you. Um, the Yesod is the connector between the Chesed, Gvur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod and the Malchut.
Isn't it the foundation?
It's the foundation. But it's the foundation that basically receives from all the other sfirot, but it's not yet the what's happening in the world. It what creates a certain foundation, right? What is the foundation? It's who I am essentially become after I worked on my Chesed, Gevur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, that I have a foundation that is balanced of all the other sfirot. And then my malchut, right? And so far I was speaking about when it's between two ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now take it as one. I am the Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. I am the giver and the receiver. So I'm pouring into myself, into my entity, into my existence. I'm putting I'm Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, right? Then I'm becoming the Yesod of all these things. My foundation is a wide, strong foundation of all these things in a balanced way. And then I'm becoming a Malchut. I'm a king. I'm becoming the king or the queen of all these foundations. Does that make it clear?
So when you say, what have we done? When you say we've acquired all these other sephirot, so you mean we've worked on and acquired all the traits?
We've acquired all the traits and we learn to use them in a balanced way.
Okay. All
Now, the other very important foundation of Judaism,
Mhm.
of Jewish philosophy, of Jewish thought, is the idea that it's not enough to think it and talk it, but the most important thing is to do it, to act it, to live it, right? So it's like that famous joke about this rabbi who was sitting and writing a book about tzedakah. And then a guy comes to him, knocks on the door, and he says, "Can I have some tzedakah?" And the rabbi says to him, "I'm sorry, I'm busy writing a book about tzedakah." Right? So what does he know about tzedakah? Nothing, right? He could know all the theories, but there's nothing in him. He has no yesod of anything, right? It's the same goes to everything, right? Who am I, basically? Yesod is basically who am I? What is my foundation? What are my values, right? And are they strong? Are they solid? Like any foundation of a building has to be strong and solid to hold that foundation, right? So if my yesod of all the other attributes is not solid, so one day I'm over chesed, and the next minute I'm over gvura, and the third minute I'm over netzach, and the fourth minute I'm over hod, right? Netzach is not that bad because, but, but, and probably hod, is not that bad either, because in a way, the foundational ones are Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet. Those are the most, the ones that are giving us the most balance. Netzach and Hod are already receiving from the Chesed and Gevurah.
Mhm.
So notice also, like what I'm saying, right, that you have the Netzach on the side of the Chesed. So the Netzach receives from the Chesed line. And the Hod is receiving from the Gevurah line, right? So why is it? So again, there's an interaction there's a giving and a receiving, right? The most basic foundation of all understanding how my life is happening in the world is understanding, number one, if I'm in chesed or I'm in gvura, and then how do I cook them into the right balance? So I have to cooking them in the right balance in the sense of eternity, in the sense of like, I'm not being chesed or gvura according to my mood, but I'm being chesed, gvura, and tiferet in a balanced way in in connection to reality, in connection to true reality, right? Like Rochelle was saying to me today, right? And we're going to talk about it later, maybe, in our next blog, God willing. But what happens, right, is that we so many times um, live in a responsive way in the world, in a victim mode in the world, reactive, instead of like reacting in an objective way. We're reacting subjectively to what life throws at us, right? I mean, like, think about it, like how many times somebody upsets you, but you get off at somebody else and not the person who upset you, right? You give out this bad energy to somebody who had done nothing wrong to you. So what happens? Your chesed and gevurah, we're not balanced, ordered, put in order, right? So you react here, you react there. You're not thoughtful about anything. You're just reacting, right? So like when you're balanced, when when you've thought it through, you've come to the conclusion of how you want to act in the world, of how you perceive the world, and how you give yourself over to the world, then you have a strong foundation. Then you know that you have a strong foundation. And when you have done it, then you're ready to be basically a king, a queen. That means that you're connected to Hashem.
So that means that, like, if you're being too judgmental, too gavor, too judgmental, you can say to yourself, wow, how am I going to add some chesed into this situation? Maybe I'll look at the person. Why are they acting the way they are? What's triggering me? And put some appreciation in there, or see the good in the person or something to kind of balance out.
Right.
Wow.
But I'll confuse you,
Wow.
because you also need a bit of gvura
Mhm.
to force yourself to put in the extra chesed. You get what
Sure.
I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
think? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, no,
Do
no.
you think that how do you deal with people who have poor impulse control? Because could be all about impulse control.
It is all about impulse control.
Yeah.
Right. So first of all, number one that Yiddishkeit teaches us is whatever is happening to me in the world, I'll start by is a reflection of what a bit of it is not fixed in me yet. So the Baal Shem Tov says that there's a story about the Baal Shem Tov that one time he saw Talmidei Chachamim desecrating Shabbos, Michal Shabbos.
Mm-hmm.
So he went to Hashem and he said, "What's going on here? You know, it was Meshabush. It wasn't our times where everybody were Michal Shabbos." So he was like, "You know, what's going on here?" So Hashem showed him that he desecrated. He had some argument with Talmidei Chachamim, with wise with Torah students, and he didn't respect them enough.
He doesn't.
He didn't respect them enough.
Oh.
From a previous experience.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And in the Talmud, Talmidei Chachamim are called Shabbat. So associatively, that's how Hashem showed him that he still had a little fixing. And this is the Baal Shem Tov. Who would think, right?
Right.
So, without taking away anything from the Baal Shem Tov, but like really, it's an important lesson. You know, it's like you could really see, you know, that you can even learn from people. You know, like King Solomon says, you can learn from everyone. And sometimes what we come to learn from our wise scholars is not necessarily what to do, but what not to do.
Right.
So, and another interesting thing that we discussed, also I mentioned yesterday, is the idea that when we say in the prayer, we say that Hashem should clean up the goyim from Eretz Yisrael, uproot the goyim from Eretz Yisrael. In mysticism, it means that we're praying to Hashem that He should uproot the goyish energy inside my heart.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It might be apologetic, but it's very interesting.
It's not apologetic.
Nah.
It's not a new Torah.
Yeah.
It's not a new Torah. Eretz
Right.
Yisrael is actually called in Chassidus and Kabbalah. Our hearts are called Eretz Yisrael,
Okay.
according to Chassidus and Kabbalah. So when we're having trouble with Eretz Yisrael, we always have to remember that we haven't purified Eretz Yisrael energetically. And how do we purify Eretz Yisrael energetically? Without getting into right-wing politics, left politics or whatever. It's not the issue. The issue is only energetic. When we clean ourselves energetically,
Right.
when we uproot all the goyish energy inside of us, all the 7 nations that are according to the Torah in Eretz Yisrael, each one of them symbolizes a different energy within us. When we clean that inside of us, Eretz Yisrael, and we will have no trouble with no goyim, no anti-Semitism, no nothing. Everything
What
will
are
be.
those? Do you know what those 7 nations?
I don't remember it right now by heart. Yeah, and the other thing that is symbolizing the same idea in a different way a little bit is the bugs in the food. The bugs in the food that we connect to. What does it mean that through every mitzvah we connect to Hashem? It's not only that we clean our body and we keep our body safe and clean, is that we keep our soul, we keep our consciousness directed by things we're doing in this world. So when I'm looking in my rice or my quinoa or whatever for bugs, I'm thinking about the bugs in my rice, but I'm also thinking, what are the bugs inside my consciousness? Right? Talking about programming, right? For programmers,
debugging,
right? Debugging. I'm debugging my brain. I'm debugging my consciousness, right?
That's what Pesach's all about.
Also, yeah. So
but
if,
much more bittul than debug. Isn't this like becoming more humble? Or
Also, yeah, the
same?
matzah versus the bread.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
the same concept.
It's not only same, it's the big massive thing that in the foundation of everything is arrogance. Ego is in the foundation of everything. That's why Pesach is such a foundational holiday in our creation and
After you
our
eat that much matzah, you
identity.
can't help but be poor
Constipated?
bittle. I wasn't gonna say that.
So if we take it back to our Kabbalah intro, it's that idea of like how much debugging I need to do on my chesed, how much debugging I need to do on my gvura, how much debugging do I need to do on the balance between chesed and gvura in every action and every word and every intonation and every body language, right? Body language in our days is such a strong, we're very aware of body language, right?
Yeah.
Body language gives over so much, right? You sit like this looking at people, right? Or like, do you smile, right? Do you, how do you play with your voice?
Why are you looking at me?
You're very expressive,
Why are you looking at him?
He's a very expressive person.
So Yesod is like is basically giving us over that idea. What else can we say about Yesod?
I thought that your son was also like a funnel, that brings the energy down from the other
Right.
road.
Right, but
Into
that's the
Malkut.
idea. What does it mean that it brings down the energy? And energy is not, like we tend, it's like sometimes, and it's a big confusion, like we tend to translate spiritual energy with the understanding, like, okay, the fact that we see energy in the physical, whoever is a physicist and deal with, whatever, EEG or MRIs or CTs or whatever it is, all those machines today that you can see energy or electricity, you can see energy, right? So sometimes we take the physiological or physicist idea of energy and try to translate it literally into spiritual energy. But when we talk about spiritual energy, we're talking about something totally different. We use the same terminology, but it's a totally different thing.
Mm-hmm.
What we're bringing is, it's not like, bringing down, connecting energy. It's not that idea. It's the feeling that you're giving. What kind of feeling are you giving? It's all about consciousness. So it's not like God is sending electric energy from somewhere, That's not the idea. The idea is what kind of like feeling you're giving over by your actions, deeds, speech, etc. Okay, so another thing about Yesod is that first of all, it's like who symbolizes Yesod? Yosef, right? Yosef Atzadik symbolizes Yesod, and both Yesod and Yosef are with the same letter Yud, and Yud is the main letter for Hashem. And it's also important to notice that Yud is the smallest letter in the alphabet, and it's basically from where all the other letters are starting. So what does it mean that God? It basically comes to teach us, number one, that's where all the wisdom comes from. The Yud K Vav K, the K and the Hey and the Vav that comes from the small Yud, right? If you continue stretching the Yud out, you come up with a Hey or with a Vav, right? So the idea is that number one, we believe, we connect to the idea that all wisdom comes from Hashem. That's why we say Irat Hashem, Irah, which is awe, also starts with the letter Yud. And what is the pasuk? The pasuk says Irat Reshit Chochma Irat Hashem. The beginning of all wisdom is the awe of Hashem. If you want to have any true wisdom, you can have lots of different wisdoms. But if you want to connect to the truth the essence of life, you have to have the awe of Hashem. It's not enough to have the awe of Hashem. It's not enough to have the love of Hashem. You also have to have the awe of Hashem. That's why it's really important to understand. We're actually reading about it, yes, in this week's Parsha in connection to Yosef. What kind of yira do we have to have in life? This is very much the foundation. Who am I? How do I create inside of me this strong foundation of faith that doesn't leave me at any moment, that is eternally with me? How do I create it? By having a relationship with Hashem that is not balanced, not on shame, not on fear, and not on desire to get anything. It's called we need to connect to Hashem from the understanding that connecting to Hashem is through wisdom, is through taking every situation that is happening to us in life and running it through our wisdom system, so to speak. Thinking about it, being thoughtful about it, not just reacting, but taking it from our back brain and bringing it to our front brain and not being a victim about it. And every time we're a victim, there's a context also in Kabbalah. There's what the Ari used to call, and Rabbi Chaim Vital used to call. They made like this format, and it creates, or it contains three terms. One is nukba, one is ze'er anpin, and one is arich anpin. Nukva is, we have to first understand that the world, again, is contained from a giver and a vessel, right? So the masculine is the giving, and the receiving side is the feminine. So there's nothing chauvinist about this concept. Just pure biology, and from the pure biology, we understand spiritual concepts. So, or the Lorian Kabbalah took this, universal understanding of biology and put it into a spiritual format of understanding spiritual existence also. Then there's the Eranpin and Arichanpin. The Eranpin is the process of thought. It basically connects with the Chokhmah and the Bina, right? What we were talking in the beginning. That everything that we learn about life through reading, listening, going to lectures, whatever, but in the end, we also learn from the experience of life. Once you got angry at something 1,000,000 times, or hopefully a bit less than 1,000,000 times, right? And you're like, you know what? This isn't going to change. Either that person is not going to change, or, the situation is not going to change, whatever it is, or I'm not going to change them, whether it's even my children, whatever it is, right? My spouse, my children, whatever it is. And I'm accepting that this is what I need to go through, and something in life is trying to teach me something. I'm going through this experience because I need to evolve through this experience. And then I put it through my Ze'er Anpin, which is basically the idea of like I put a small God into my life. Like I connect to God in a small level, right? Then I get...
What does that mean? Za'er?
Ze'er is like small.
Small?
Yeah.
And the second one?
And Pin is like, I forgot the exact translation right now.
Isn't it
Yeah.
small
Is there a
face?
chart you can look up or something like that? Or?
Yeah, but I'm using my phone for the video, so I can't Google it up now.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to give
Well,
it to... Okay. Yeah.
Should we Google?
Ze'er Anpin.
ZEIRANPIN.
I wonder how much you can get in English on these.
It comes up.
Yeah? Okay, good.
It's Aramaic.
Right, it's Aramaic.
It means lesser countenance or small face.
Mm-hmm.
Right, small
Revealed
face.
us.
Right, and
aspect of
Pin is from the
God.
word panim. Right,
Okay.
right. Okay. So there's like a small face and a big face. or a long face, really, not a big face, a long face.
Okay.
So the idea is that we have a small face, meaning that we put like a small God into my consciousness. But eventually, it's not enough to have a small God in my consciousness. I need to have a big godliness in my consciousness. I need to, like, a widespread godliness in my consciousness. So, what is the difference if I'm in Nukba, or if I'm in Ze'er Anpin, or if I'm in Arich Anpin? It basically is that if I'm in Nukba, I'm only a receiver and I'm only a reactor. Wow, I would love to have your faces, then you can read more about it. I can have I can be Nukba, which means that I can be a complete receiver. A situation is happening to me, and I'm right off, like I'm a volcano, right? I'm responding right off. No process of thought, right? Then I could be on the level of Ze'er Anpin, that I go through some kind of a process. Okay, been there, done that. How do I move on to the next level of reaction that is not going to be exactly the way it was last time, and it's a bit better, at least a bit better than it was last time, right? Then there's Arich Anpin. Arich Anpin is when I've reached already the stage of like, I don't need to go through that whole cycle. Right away, I'm like, okay, it's all Hashem, it's all good, it's teaching me, I'm moving on to the next level. I'm getting more tolerant, my reactions are more to the spot. My Yesod, this is like the bottom line of Yesod. I'm like, I've already created this wide foundation of Arich Anpin that I'm not that I don't need to go through the whole cycle of like wait, breathe, go to the next room, come back when you're calmer. No, my instinct becomes, it's like that. Remember we spoke about that? My instinct becomes a different instinct. I don't need to go through the whole process for my instinct to not respond thank you to not respond negatively from my instincts, but to move on to the next lesson in life or to the next stage in life.
How do you recognize you've reached that?
When you do it, when you don't feel like your whole, or if people tell you, you react in a certain way, over and over again. It's not pleasant for us when you say things in this or that way, right?
Right.
So you're like, okay, I'm going to be more mindful about it, right?
Right.
First time you could say like, oh, I did it again. I'm such an idiot. No, we don't want to have that conversation with myself either.
Right.
No, I want to say, okay, thank you for telling me. Like, now if I'll become like this victim, which is somewhere between Nukba and Ze'er Anpin, right? Oh, I did it again. Or they just saying that I'm that way. I'm not really that way, and I have to go through the whole thing of maybe losing another friend or harming another relationship or whatever it is, right? And or getting into a quarrel with my spouse or my children or whatever it is, right? Or I can, okay, maybe already a million people told me that I do this and that again and again, and I haven't listened. Maybe it's time to listen.
There's a therapist who came out of the Holocaust. I can't remember his name.
Victor.
Viktor
Frankel.
Frankl. Thank you. And he says that between an incident and the way you react to it, there's a space, and in that space is where your freedom lies. You have the choice as to how you're going to react every time. So I like that.
That's
Right.
great.
It's basically exactly that.
He's
Right.
great.
We're not subjected to a certain behavior that we've repeated a million times.
Right.
We're getting closer and closer to our redemption every time we've acted the same way a million times. And it's time for us to listen that it's time to change.
Personal redemption versus
Yeah.
group.
Yeah. Personal redemption, obviously. Yeah. Okay, so also the idea of Yosef, why is Yosef also symbolizing Yesod? Because Yesod is also peace. And Yosef is symbolizing also peace, because what he had um, suffered from his brothers and the way he was able to contain that and to open his heart to them at the moment is like beyond any comprehension. So he's also symbolizing peace. And in our terms, what is peace? Peace is also a combination of, of basically putting in peace um, um, chesed and, first of all, putting in peace chesed and vora, but also putting in peace lust and gevura. Why do lust and gevura have to have peace between them? Because lust, as much as it's a negative term in in our lives, but lust comes from love, not necessarily, but lust comes from chesed. We spoke about it in one of our classes. Over chesed can bring lust. That's why it says in the Talmud that a person who is an over chesed person should be much more careful, and that we know that he has an over sensitivity or an over danger to be a lustful person.
Uh-huh.
So an over chesed person, a person who's very committed to doing chesed in the community, for example, needs to know that about themselves, that, for example, they should be even more careful with yichud laws than maybe somebody who's not that chesidic.
Interesting.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and it makes sense.
Right. So, and why is Yosef symbolizing that? Because Yosef is symbolizing both lust, not that he was lustful,
Right.
but he had dealt with
He
lust.
attracted lust.
I don't know if he attracted lust, but he dealt with lust in such a
Yeah.
magnificent way. I mean, who would have stood that kind of lust? They say that, the Medrash says that Potiphar's wife came to him 3 times a day. It wasn't like once in 3 months, So, like, to think that, like, you're sitting in a cell alone with no love and no appreciation, and you were so respected before, and now you have nothing, right? And you could be physically redeemed like this, right? But you would lose all your spiritual, um, you would basically sell your soul to the Satan, right? So, and to be able not to do that, what do you need? You need tons of Gevura, right? But Gevura is also the one which might take you away from doing good things in the world, because if you don't use the attribute of Gevura in a mindful way, then the Gevura might be, it's not the right Gevura, but it's the way people in our generation, it's the way Gevura is being used, unfortunately, so much more, but it's completely misunderstanding of what Gevura is. Because in our world, we're taking Gevura into completely in the new age, whatever postmodern Kabbalah stage of learning. We're using Gevura as boundaries, right? Don't get into my boundaries, or I don't have, my boundaries don't allow me to help you now because it's my boundaries, it's my needs, right? And this is not what Gevura is, because what Yiddishkeit teaches us that Gevura is exactly the opposite. Is Ezu Gibo Akoveshet Yitzro. Who is a hero? This is Gevura, comes from the word Gibo. And the hero is the one who's able to conquer his needs to do the right thing. So that's what that's why we need to learn to put peace between lust and Gevura, or use them in a mindful, balanced way, in a way that we don't get lustful, that we use chesed in the right way, and we use Gevura in the right way, that will actually contain our love in the right format. So Okay, so then we tend to think that peace has to come from love alone. Like, let's say if I'm speaking to a serial killer and I tell him, let's make peace between you and evil. So people will tell me, right, you're crazy. It's a serial killer, right? So what do I have to tell that serial killer instead? In order to put peace between the serial killer and the world, I have to teach the serial killer to be aware of his negative way of thinking and negative actions.
I think Biden did that.
What?
Biden pardoned a serial
I don't know.
killer.
Whatever's happening in politics is all corrupt anyway. I don't know if we
Yeah.
can take any of those terms and put them onto politics.
Right.
We won't get out of it.
Right.
But anyway, I mean, some people might say, okay, so it all stays in the sweet talk realm and it doesn't become practical. But the problem is, like, who in politics, we were trying to think earlier, who in Israeli politics I could say, with, let's say, a sureness of 90%, 95, 90, maybe, can't say 100% on anybody, I think, but let's say 95, 99%, I can maybe count a handful of people from the whole 120 people in our Knesset who I can trust that they wouldn't sell their mother for a bowl of soup,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, what?
Nothing.
Whatever,
Matzo ball soup.
however you want, exactly. So, and none of them is powerful. They're all the small ones, yeah, because the ones who are powerful have already sold their mother to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Soup.
So, so kal v'chomer in big politics. So that's what I'm saying, But anyway, going back to our serial killer, I have to, like, so what do I have in order to be able to speak to the serial killer, right? I have to create some space of love in my heart to really believe that he can make tshuva, right? But from that place, I also have to be able to speak with Gevura to teach him that in order to make tshuva, he needs Gevura in his life, right? If I only come with him with love, he's not going to change.
No.
Right? So the question is, how do we do it in the world? It's a question. I don't know if I have the answer. But how do we do it with small corruption? How do we do it with small evil? How do we do it with bigger evil? Right? But it's important, I think, to understand this foundation, right? This yesod idea to be able to pray about it. Like, to create that space in our hearts, that space exists somewhere in our sphere, right? That we realize that we want to think good of even the worst situations and the worst criminals in the world, just enough to help them, to give them a hand to make tshuva, but not forget that they're evil. And we tend to go back and forth in a very unbalanced way on that. That's the whole problem between the right and the left in the world, and all of the world's politics. That thing is very unbalanced.
The Hesed and Gevurah.
The Chesed and Gevurah, yeah. I'm being very cautious in my words not to, mention any specific political ideas, but whatever controversies in the world, but controversial ideas. But just think about a million situations, and we keep going back and forth and not being balanced. So whatever you believe in life, whether you're more to the right or whatever to the left, this prime minister, that president, doesn't matter. However you look at it, things are very unbalanced. Either we come up to big criminals, in a way that that forgets that they're criminals because we want them to make tshuva, right? Just the other day, it's heartbreaking. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I can't hold my mouth shut, right? Just yesterday, it was so heartbreaking. I saw this video of a 3-year-old, literally, maybe even not 3, playing. They have in Gaza. They have rocket games for little ones. They're learning how to shoot rockets
Yeah.
and what do you call them? RPGs. They have like an
Yeah.
RPG little game
RPG
and
kids.
RPG for kids and
Yeah.
rocket shooter for 2, 3-year-old kids.
It's terrible.
This is what they're playing with from the age of 2. So with all the desire to help them create a life, I don't know, like I can only pray about it. But in the meantime, we need to survive for anything to happen, so that we can continue praying for it.
Do
Um,
those kids have free will?
They're captives.
Yeah,
They're
are
captives. They're captives.
Yeah.
But in a way, we're also captives. We're all captives of a non-clear consciousness, of generations and generations of unclear balance between our chesed and Gora also. Whether we were hurt by something, neglected, had an abused childhood, we are misconcepted completely about, how to use chesed and Gevurah. Me coming from an abusive childhood, I say one of the worst consequences of my abused childhood is that I was over chesed with my children. And it took me years to figure out the right boundaries with my children because I wasn't able to put any boundaries for many years. I was so afraid of becoming my mother that right? So it's like we're totally misguided and on what our correct balance is. Yeah.
There's no place you can go and learn that.
No, there's no book that will teach you the right balance.
No, it's life.
Well, I think you learn balance in your own. That's the only place
Exactly.
you can learn it.
Exactly. Right. And that's why it says, by the way, the Sfirot are also called the ancient kings.
Oh.
Yeah. I just learned this myself. They're called the ancient kings. And where it comes from is in Bereshis. There's the mentioning of the 7 kings, and then the 8th king with a wife, which that is the idea that the whole idea, like if you remember the Zohar speaks about it a lot, is that God created and destroyed worlds.
Yeah, and she's
right. So we say he created and destroyed them 3 times, but really he created and destroyed them more. So he created and destroyed them, and I think it goes perfectly with the, if somebody is asking how does physics count so many millions of years to the world versus the Torah, that could be another explanation of the gap between the Jewish counting of the world and the because we're counting in a theological non-numerical way. We don't care about the actual physical number of the existence of the world. What we care is what we can learn about it spiritually from the Torah. So the Torah is basically teaching us, the basic idea everybody knows. Hashem created the world with Din, then he saw that the world cannot be created with Din, so he created it with Chesed. Then he finally realized that now, what God didn't know, right? But it's not... But it's not that he didn't know. It's that we create our world again and again of a different balance of chesed and din, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I was saying yesterday, it's like it's as much as October 7th is was so horrific, and as much as it's so heartbreaking to think every second of our brothers being held in those tunnels in Gaza. But imagine how horrible it is that if now we're not being supported by the world with our brothers being held in the tunnels, if we let them out, then we will have no justification to finish this once and for all.
Oh my God.
Never thought of it that way, right?
Right? It's so heartbreaking. Now, why is it? Because the world is completely, the world finally has a fraction of what we've been having in the last, who knows?
Weeks.
No, not a couple of weeks.
No?
No, not a couple of weeks. At
75
least,
years.
at,
Oh,
at
oh,
least, you know, in
9/11.
modern history, at least
9/11.
100 years.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
was thinking it was
I was
going
reading
on
an
in the
older
States.
woman who was living in
In
Jaffa.
Europe and
She's like 100 something years old today. She was living in Jaffa as a kid in the 1920s, 30s. And she's describing how in Jaffa, Tel Aviv, whatever, there was no hardly any Tel Aviv back then, they couldn't walk around safely. It's known, you know, the massacre in Hebron, the massacre in Sfat, in the 20s and the
Samaria.
30s and the 40s. Yeah, it kept happening. October 7th was not a new thing.
No.
They massacred us again and again and again. So now we finally, and even within us, right? Look, I'm saying always like, do I accept my own words, right? Like even me playing with my thoughts all the time. So what do we need to do? You know, like we want to create the space of goodness inside of us, right? On one hand. On the other hand, what can we do? We need to survive, right? So this is the yesod. The yesod is exactly that. Keeping that in mind, that we are good people and we got to do what we got to do. And there is peace between this and that. We can make peace between this and that. How, when, I don't know. But eventually we're striving there.
Yeah.
Okay? In the meantime, I can't fix the whole world. And I'm not the prime minister or the president, and nobody is asking me anyway, right? So I can at least create that within my own life. And I can create a ripple effect by creating that balance inside of me, inside of my small relationships in the world, with my spouse, with my children, with my colleagues, with whoever, with friends, right? And the more I create it in my small world, the more it will happen around the whole world.
That should go. That was great.